right, I'm going to give you 3 names. I'm going to tell you that they're like their earliest possible work, and I need you to pick the movie for me. Okay. So we got Holly Hunter, Jason Alexander, and Fisher Stevens in the movie.
There we go, right there.
Burning. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I'm getting a huge Seinfeld fan over here, so like anytime I get to see Jason Alexander not playing George, but pretty much playing George, I will.
He's swarmy in this.
Yeah, he's a slime ball in this movie, but we also get like the first feature of Jason Alexander, the first film of Holly Hunter, and a very early, the feature debut of Fisher Stevens, who had done some TV work. Yeah. Kind of appeared here for the first time, and it's such a weird movie because it exists in that Friday the 13th ripoff. And yet they used the guy who made Friday the 13th what it was to rip it off.
Right, yeah. I have to admit, I have never heard of this movie until even a couple of years ago. I have never heard of this movie. Nobody really talked about this movie in like 80s slasher movies. And I have to say I was a young kid when in 81, but still, we were still immense in slasher movies. I have never heard of this movie.
There you go. So he hadn't heard about it, but we're going to bring it to you today. The Burning on Kyle and Nick on Film. Join us. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from Goethe Film Reviews.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and today we're going to talk about another slasher from the great year of slasher movies, 1981, The Burning. Pretty much was off everybody's radar until recently people started recognizing it and talking about it. So what is The Burning?
So The Burning is based on the campfire legend. The film follows a disfigured camp caretaker who returns to Camp Blackfoot to exact his revenge on the campers and counselors he believes to be responsible. The gardening shears are unsheathed, the bodies are piling up, and it's clear that no one is safe.
Okay, so at the beginning, you get obviously what the title is all about, but then they don't get very much burning afterwards, do you?
Yeah, and after watching our Scissors episode, I'm not going to give you a match to life for this entire time, but but yeah, it's The Burning is kind of like a great title that maybe doesn't exactly tell you what the movie's about, right. But it's also like they were in that we're kind of ripping off Friday the 13th, so we can't just call it Saturday the 13th or anything like that.
I think that's one of the reasons why it went away, kind of like a whisper away, because it's such a ripoff of Friday the 13th, kind of like the movie from 1988, Bad Dreams. This is a ripoff almost of Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's kind of gone away. But I think that has the same kind of aspects of people, well, it's a ripoff, kind of push it in. I mean, even Jason Alexander tries to forget he was in this movie.
Yeah, it doesn't come up that often, and to be honest, it's a tougher find today than it was.
I think that's the journey for looking for it is part of the aspect.
Yeah, exactly. It's we're finding kind of I don't want to say the Wild West, but it is like the Wild West of streaming, where like those older films, sadly to say, are not as easy to come by as they once were. Yeah. Still probably easier than finding a VHS copy that's been checked out for weeks on end, but we're in the kind of stage where you've got to hunt down these movies. We had it with Tenebrae, right, to go get a whole renting streaming service just so I could watch it. Prowler. And The Burning was another movie like that, The Prowler, where like you kind of got to hunt for these things, and that's part of the magic is when you find them, you have to consume them. And that's how The Burning was for me, is I wanted to watch the film for many years. I missed it when it was on one of the major streaming services, and so I had to go and kind of hunt around to find it.
And so you get the event, and what really is remarkable about the movie is the kills and Tom Savini's action and makeup and everything is really one of the most effective. It's actually more, even though there was impressive stuff in The Prowler, here he's really shining out too because it's shot bright. You know, in The Prowler it's really dark and you can hide a little bit of the magic, but here he's out in the open.
So, I think he has a tougher job in this movie than he did with The Prowler. Yeah. And it's funny because, again, they claim multiple times that the film was written before Friday the 13th. And I can see there's enough differences in the story that I would buy that. Yeah. But it's tough when you have your guy from Friday the 13th that you took, like he was literally brought over, instead of doing part 2, he was brought over to do this film instead. And he gets a chance basically to improve upon everything he did in that first Friday movie. He gets to do a throat slash, he gets to do a stab through the eyes, like he gets to do all these things that he had done previously in Friday the 13th, but he gets to do them on a grander scale and kind of learn from his mistakes and evolve.
And so, of course, he has a signature weapon, and that's one of the things you start out, I think this is one of the movies, actually, the slasher movies, where you start out with a signature weapon for the killer to use, and it's a hedge clipper, but he doesn't use it the way you think hedge clippers should be used.
Yeah. Well, director Tony Malum said that he didn't like the way that he had his Cropsey killer using the shears, so like 90% of the movie when it's just like the shadow or like the stabbing motion, it's the director taking over because he didn't like the way it was being done. But it's also not how you use that weapon, really. Like, it looks cool, but really when you start to dissect it, it's kind of goofy.
Right. After watching it a couple times, like, why'd you pick that? It doesn't really fit. It didn't, you're just going to trim hedges. But
how many hedges do you
I think it's all about that famous shot of raising it up and the light hitting the blades and everything. That's the whole reason why you would have that as a weapon, because you got that one great shot.
And part of me thinks that you're lucky you have a great weapon, because Tom Savini was unaware that he was going to have to make a crop scene makeup. He was not told until 3 days before they had to have it finished. And so he was like sneaking off set to his pickup to make this effect while they were filming the movie those 3 days. So we didn't get to see it on display very much in the movie. And he thinks it's one of his lesser projects because it was rushed so quickly. But that's kind of the essence of, like, if you didn't have these gardening shears, you might lose that style that makes the burning what it is, because you don't get to see the villain very much.
Of course, you have one of the effective kills that he was used in Friday the 13th, but is used in this one. Of course, the blade going through the throat.
Yep, and again, it's grander, you know?
Yeah, because you're doing it out in the open. You do it, well, I think it was even supposed to be shot on a boat or a water, a raft or whatever in the movie. But it's still an effective usage, even though it's aged almost.
Its only flaw is that it's not Kevin Bacon in the scene. So, which with much love, Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Like, everything just feels like a bit more ramped up, and that's maybe the right way to respond to a Friday the 13th if you're going to be amongst this whole grouping of films that's ripping off the movie. Yeah. It's best to stand out by going for it, by really doing something special. And I think this is unique in that the campers are older than what we would have gotten in Friday the 13th, but there are campers in the movie who are getting attacked. Like, and that's something we never got in Friday the 13th, except for part 6, and the kids in that film are meant more like something to make you think he's going to hurt them, but they're never really in as much danger. You know, whereas this movie, they're on full display.
Everybody is in danger. So you get a lot of the accidents, you get this weird hospital scene of, like, you want to see this dude come in, you think you could be a doctor.
It reminded me of that Kill Bill scene. You know?
Yeah, but because she's in there Friday. Let's see if you can handle this man, you can be a doctor. It's almost like he's a barometer, and then he grabs his hand.
I hope I'm never on the receiving end of that. No matter what happens to me in my life, I hope I'm never in a hospital bed with people going like, "You don't want to check that out, man."
But initially, when you see the movie, it doesn't really fit very well. But after multiple viewings, it comes part of the whole reason why you watch it. It's kind of silly.
The schlock factor is on full display. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is one of the first films that the UK described as a video nasty, which is one of their many videos that were banned from release in the UK because of their hard-edged violence or gruesome detail, if you will.
But that gets the attraction
later on. So films. And again, that didn't do anything to stop people. They just had to try and bootleg it then. And then you're just watching a lesser version of a good movie. So, and The Burning has been that then. It's been banned in the UK for many years. It's also been tough to find in home video. Like here,
it's a ripoff. What's regarded as a ripoff of Friday the 13th, so people have kind of like shied away from it, almost like shunning it.
Yeah.
But now there's a lot of people talking about it that I've never, like I said, oh my God, for all the conversations and reading Fangoria and everything, nobody really talked about this movie.
Yeah, and I think, I don't want to dive too much into this because it's not really what we're here to talk about, but I think one of the reasons the film kind of resurfaced was with the allegations against Harvey Weinstein. Because Weinstein came up with the original idea for the story. His brother Bob co-wrote the screenplay, and it was also one of the first instances of his inappropriate behavior being documented during his trial. So I wonder if when that stuff started to really come out with the Me Too movement, if this film started to get discussed then. And, I'm not saying like good or bad or anything about that, but like
probably memories of this
probably
movie
resurfaced as a film project at that point and being discussed because it was kind of tied into that. And it's unfortunate that something so horrible like that had to take place and really affect the way that people view a movie like The Burning, because again, like, you've got some pretty interesting performances in there. You've got a nice killer, you've got lots of blood and gore, and you've got like it's a fun movie to watch. And we even get Brian Backer, who I'm a huge fan of from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, getting to play our kind of gross person.
Yeah, he was very, and they didn't handle it the right way. You wouldn't handle it that way in the now.
But wily kids always looking in the showers.
I'll talk to him about peeping into showers. Yeah, you will never get that anymore.
Yeah,
but and of course another '80s troop of the girls playing softball. Yeah, that's early 80s for sure. Too.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the things like, oh my God, this is a time capsule.
And time capsule it as well with Glazer the bully, played by Larry Joshua, who's just kind of like that over the top. Yeah, like the one who's just like, hey bro, what are you doing? You picking up people? Like he's like got that smarmy sliminess that I would equate to a character like Trent from the Friday the 13th remake, who's like to the nth degree of, you know, jerkiness. That someone you want to die, you want to see it happen horribly, and not to mention,
use that like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the kid in the wheelchair that was such an annoying brat that when he gets the chainsaw in the chest, you're like, finally,
you're like, finally we have reached the place.
Shut him up, right?
And if Larry Joshua has not convinced you with his performance as Glazer, he's also the guy who underpays Tobey Maguire's character in Spider-Man, which is one of the reasons that Ben gets killed. So like, let's just remember that right now. If you didn't like him in this movie, he's kind of smarmy and everything. So
he does improve very well. But there's some effective things about it. It does. You get the camaraderie around. You know, you get the whole camaraderie of the kids around. You get the effectiveness. You got. I don't think she ever did a movie after this. Carrick.
I don't have her information, but I don't think so.
No, I think this is actually that last movie, and you can't really find anything she did after this movie. I think she just kind of went on for her personal life. And I try to research about what happened to her, and there's nothing.
It's funny about that though. Like horror movies are that thing where they can make your career, like it can really boost you into the stratosphere. Or else it almost seems like something that people just tried for fun. Because it happens a lot where like someone just appears in a horror movie one time and they never work again, and they just decide like it's just not for me. Because that happened, you know, throughout every major franchise. There's been people that popped up and like they've made their whole lives now on like festival appearances and cons.
Yeah. And of course you got the great. I always use these in the slasher movies of the guy and girl doing it, making out, but then their clothes are taken away, and so they have to go on the hunting trail. It's a great movie trip to do camera movement and just increments of, you know, it's almost like put the cheese out for the mouth and just keep going and going and going.
Yeah, which in fact happened in Friday the 13th Part 2 with the clothing stolen, but this time in that film it was not the killer that stole them. So it was kind of like it was a good play off of.
Well, I think that was supposed to be like another ripoff. It was supposed to be Brad's character. You thought, oh, that kid, that swarmy kid who's been sneaking in girls and he took their clothes away.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to believe all that, and then you get, what?
Yeah, I think it captures the tropes of the camping experience in a way that Friday the 13th didn't get to, because that was all about the pre-camp. That was about the fixing of the camp and less about the actual experience of being at one. And I think the set pieces work. They are memorable in a way, like remember we talked, you know, recently about the initiation and how like there was like an immemorable quality to watching it.
Yeah,
like,
there was a burning in that one too.
Yeah, exactly. There's maybe more burning.
Burnings, yeah. It seems like slasher movies start with a burning.
Yeah. And in this film, it's like, I think there is enough memorable set pieces. I mean, the most famous scene, the raft scene, is one of those like gory, bloody messes of masterpiece that happens in horror films.
Yeah. And of course the hands. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, my hands. Right. Yeah.
There's always got to be a scene, you know, where like someone loses a couple fingers, they like look at it and you can tell that the hand isn't really there. It's the way it moves.
Yeah. You get the puppets. Yeah. So, right. But like I said, I think that's one of the reasons why it got left away, because there's a lot of things that you will recognize from watching Friday the 13th movies. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that you see in other slasher movies. It's in the camp, so that's why we use camp dialogue. It's a campy movie. It really is a campy movie.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, there's not really, I would say, even though the kills are really kind of really good, there's real no originality to it. We've seen that
it's unfortunate because there was 5 other major horror releases in theaters at the exact same time. Those were horror new releases. There was also 2 re-released horror movies in theaters at the exact same time as The Burning. One of them was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was re-released. They came out with the other one was, but there was 7 other movies that you could pay your money to go see instead of The Burning. Yeah, and so again, like that standout quality has to be on display, or your movie's going to be forgotten. And oftentimes that plays up to the trailer or the poster.
Yeah. So, that's one of the reasons why probably not part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's one, I think when it came out wasn't really well viewed by many. A lot of people didn't like. I think Leonard Maltin gave it this really scathing review, which if you can find is really fun to read.
Doesn't surprise me.
But the film has recently been reassessed, and it actually now holds an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. because of all the.
I think because everybody looks back on it. Oh, let's see. Oh, it's so 1981. Why didn't you guys talk about this? It's so.
There's a level of acceptance that comes with some films. We always talk too about Rotten Tomatoes scores skewing downwards. Like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out and had a really great Rotten Tomatoes score, and over time it's just been ticking back down as people have been re-reviewing the film, seeing more of its faults, liking it less. And then that's kind of the opposite case here. Is I think this film was very poorly received, but then over time people have seen what is very special about the horrors on display, and I think it's risen up for that reason.
I think it's appreciated, and I think now people look at it as a capsule what was going on in the early '80s to move the genre of slasher movies. People are trying to figure out what they want to do with it, and even though Halloween came out, it's still kind of, and then we call it like early '80s. It's still navigating around the late '70s of what slasher movies are.
It's kind of like when Paranormal Activity came out, because I don't think Blair Witch Project really pushed that found footage thing in. Paranormal Activity, when it became big, everybody was doing a Paranormal Activity found footage movie, and most of them were terrible. Yeah. And it's kind of like a subgenre finding its footing again. We didn't have popular slashers. We talk about Peeping Tom and Psycho as like being some of the first slasher movies, but Halloween is the one that made slasher movies a thing. Like that is the one that created that subgenre as a recurring element. And then we get a giant swath of not great to great ripoffs that have just kind of appeared. And then we get ripoffs of the ripoffs, which is what we have here. So,
but I think like we were trying to emphasize is that I think people enjoy it now because it's encapsulating what was at the time. Yeah. Where people didn't like it because it's just so generic almost. Yeah. And where people are now discovering the newness, the freshness of it, to like, oh my God, that's what they always did in horror movies. Let's appreciate what they always did in that time.
If you could take all 6 of those wide-release horror films from 1981 that were out at the same time and just kind of stretch them out and view them each in their own way, you can see something special about almost all of them. It's just when you view them together, you see all the problems because they were problems in other movies. And so, like, it's almost like a thing if you'd played A, B, C, D, E, F, or F, E, D, C, B, A, like depending on which order you saw them, you was going to decide how well you liked them.
I like that skull. I forget about it all the time. Tom Savini's moving acting skull, even though it's supposed to look silly, but it's actually moving and buggy. The stunt for the guy on fire. I mean,
the effects work is great, and that's again, I would say we talked about the Prowler, but I would say that the Burning is a better display of his abilities as a FX person, because I think some of the things he does in the Prowler are like, whoa, like I don't know how he did that. But here he has a more repetitive style of like amping everything up a little bit more.
You see what we always appreciate from Tom Savini. The fingers are going then through the throat, and how did you do that? And well, now you can see how he did that. The body's shifting, everything, but it's edited perfectly, and then you get the little blood dripping down the side.
And we actually get editing from Jack Shoulder, who did not become famous for editing, but later became a director who Alone in the Dark with Jack Palance from '82, I believe. And then he also did the second film in the Nightmare on Elm Street film, Freddy's Revenge, the second movie, and also Wishmaster 2, which was a less than stellar film in the '90s. But like Jack Shoulder kind of made a name for himself in directing, but you can see stylistic flares of how his editing complemented what was being done on film. I wouldn't say his editing was above average, but it complemented what other people were doing. It didn't overstay its welcome in certain scenes. It moved at a nice clip. Like, he had capabilities.
But even the kill scenes are perfectly edited. It doesn't stay too long where you like hold it or everything is boom, oh my God, boom,
Yeah, it doesn't take too long to breathe. It kind of just moves and grooves.
And of course, you have to hold on to the fire scene just a little bit longer than the slasher scenes, and that makes it far more effective and far more gruesome when you hold on to the fire and you're walking around, oh, I'm on fire.
Right. And I really like, kind of looking at this film on the whole after having seen it now, it has a urban legend-like quality to it. I like that it's got on its beginning and end the idea of this Cropsey as a legend, and we're going to be based on this popular legend. I mean, there's been documentaries about Cropsey, whether or not this was actually a real thing that occurred, and this was a very fictionalized version because every time that story has been told, it's been told slightly different. This was kind of someone's take on the Cropsey legend. I like the idea that the film kind of ends with you thinking to yourself, like, and the legend lives on.
I do. And of course, you have to end it that way at night in the fire and everything.
Yeah, it feels like a story that would have been told in Friday the 13th Part 2, because they do that at the campfire scene there, is they talk about how Jason's still out there. He saw his mother beheaded. Like, it feels like a natural progression to Friday the 13th Part 2.
Almost, you could switch titles.
Yeah.
Almost could switch titles and give this one Friday the 13th Part 2.
This film could have been the sequel, and then we would have had a Cropsey killer instead of a Jason killer. Like, you could have seen that very same translation happen.
Yeah.
It's just a very fascinating movie that I really enjoyed.
So, have you seen The Burning?
Yeah, let us know your comments down below. Kind of, what is your favorite 1981 horror movie? We've got so many of them that we actually toyed with the idea of doing an entire month of 1981 horror movies.
But I
we could have done it.
I think 81, 84, 88 are marker years for horror movies, especially for the 80s. If you want to talk 80s, 81 to 84 to 88.
And of course,
doesn't mean there other years had great movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think just the expousory amount of like just so many movies coming out. And I think even like our heavy hitters are Freddie, Michaels, and Jason's each like kind of got their stamp on each of those years.
But I would say it'd be fun if you want to watch 81 horror movies and then you go right to 88. You see the massive change in just 7 years, a massive change of what they've done.
Yeah. Clearly, we've been watching a lot of In Search of Darkness.
Right. Yeah.
Of course. So let us know as we continue through this month if there's any other films you guys would like to hear us talk about. We're kind of ramping out to I think the list we've got right now, but we're probably going to be talking about horror movies again and again and again as the episodes go by. So
it's going to crop up.
Oh!
I had to do it.
Once again, thank you guys for joining us. Give us a second to like, subscribe, check out all the different stuff we've got on that Patreon down there. You could be like our patrons, like Brian Eggert, who get a chance to pick some of the different films that we get to talk about, have a say in kind of the different directions that our episodes go, because we could talk about any movie at any amount of time, and it's nice to have someone else tell us what to do. So that's, again, all of the time we have today, guys. You can find my film reviews on GoFilmReviews.com.
You can find my podcast, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you can find podcasts. You can also follow the show on Twitter and Instagram.
Absolutely, links are down in the description. Until next time, don't play with fire.